Hello and welcome. We are going to be talking today about friendship, relationships, sex, dating, how we navigate all those things as we go through that midlife space, as we call it these days, or dealing with hormone change and menopause. I've got three fabulous women joining me who have all been doing the journey. So I've got Anna, I have got Rebekah, and I have got Elizabeth. Welcome to you all. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining. So if I could, first off, ask where you're at in your journey. Anna?
I'm 2 years post-menopause. It's been really difficult. I won't lie about that. It's been a bit of a roller coaster hormonal ride. I'm now slathered in HRT. I think I found the sweet spot. Right. So today I'm coping.
Because it's a moving goalpost, as we well know. Yes. Rebekah?
So I'm a little bit earlier than Anna. I'm 11 months now without a period. So I'm kind of dipping in theory, in about 4 weeks' time into postmenopause. And it's been swirly.
Yeah, I love the definition that you give, swirly. And how's it been for you, Elizabeth?
So it's similar to Anna. So I'm 53 now. It's about a year post-menopause, I think. I'm very much enjoying this bit. It was the first 2 years when I had no clue what was going on that was very swirly, I would say.
And that's why these conversations are so very important. Yeah, and I'm same age and yet still regular as clockwork. So it just goes to show that we're on complete. And I started in my early to mid 40s. Yes. So first up, I'm really curious to know kind of how you've navigated that with your friends and when it's come to talking about it together in your conversations. Have your friendships changed? Anna, you've got, I know, a good friendship group. How's that sustained?
It's a really interesting question, actually, because I've always had good friendships throughout my 20s, 30s, 40s. There's something maybe more intense about them in your 50s because you're navigating so much in midlife. So not just your bodily changes, and of course, immediately the minute I get together with any women, that's the first thing we talk about. But you're having to navigate sick parents and caring, possibly kids leaving home, feeling invisible in the workplace and that sort of midlife career space. There's a lot. So I think maybe my friendships are perhaps a little bit more intense now, which is a good thing.
Have yours changed at all, either of you, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I think so. So I think similar to what you're saying is that certainly friends now are happier to talk about that kind of thing. I didn't find that before when there was I think there was more of a taboo kind of linked to ageing and menopause, and so I wasn't really getting any answers as to what was going on. I was very, very angry that I went for 2 years completely clueless, and I felt that I'd had women in my life, maybe not close friends, but mums at the school gate or people that you would chat to who were quite happy to talk about all sorts of things. I even had a mother once offer to give me a makeover.
Which I'm sure came from a really good place.
It genuinely did. But now I think maybe because I just talk about it all the time, that anyone else in my social circle feels, okay, I'm going to join in then, that's fine. Yeah. I feel it's changed positively, definitely.
I definitely think that we're all the generation that have been very much part of that shift and that change.
Yeah.
In our social group, we often talk about the menopause whisperer, that person who kind of gets there first and kind of sits on the sidelines and when it feels appropriate, can gently say, do you think it might be perimenopause related? You navigate the world as other as a female quite often anyway, and so those big biochemical shifts that take place, we often turn to each other to kind of work out what's going on, because you kind of need people that have gone before you, who've kind of lit those fires that you know how to follow. And I think with menopause, I've definitely found that, but I've also fast-track friendships, and maybe that's what you're talking to, Anna, in terms of intensity, that a lot of the people that I'm very close to now, I probably only met sort of 4 or 5 years ago, but something collided in that we maybe our stories of menopause were similar, or we were struggling with certain other life events like ageing parents or kids leaving home, and those things are the things that you just kind of gel so much quicker, perhaps.
And don't you find when you meet someone, you literally go straight there?
Yeah. Totally.
Which is a great thing. But do you think that's also because at this age we just haven't got time to mess about with anything else? It's a bit like, OK, what's going on for you? Because my estrogen is all over the place. Do you know, you just want to get straight in there, really, don't you?
Yeah, and there's a kind of, I think, a shifting in terms of maybe your sense of self. You do have to rediscover who you are, and with that comes an element of working out what you want to leave behind. And as you say, you just become more of yourself, perhaps.
Has anyone left behind any friendships, actually?
That's a point. Yes.
Yeah. Friendships change. You know that saying, there's that saying, isn't there, that friendships are for a season, a reason or a lifetime.
Yeah, I love that.
It's great, isn't it?
It is, and it's so true.
And you can tick off the people where you've gone, OK, the people that I've worked with, they were there for, you know, a reason. Then there's the seasonal people that maybe it was, you know, at university or whatever. And then there's the people for lifetime that you've had throughout your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s that you're always going to know.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Have you left behind people?
Yeah, definitely. But also I've been really intentional about the ones that I've got, even if they're living overseas or far away, making sure that I prioritise those friendships because I found this support so vital. And I feel like suddenly the peripheral friendships, they don't add value to life in a way that we necessarily need our friendships to do. I think our friendships take a new turn and take a deeper dive, really, in their importance in the way that we go about this navigation, because it's such a change. How have you found it?
Yeah, I think that's really, really true, that you just, I feel you can spot the people very quickly who will talk to you honestly. And I always gravitated towards the grandmas at school pickup because they were honest and open and comfortable with themselves and not feeling the need to compete maybe in any way. Yeah. So I think at this age, I think female friendship is really important. It's vital. And I really need it in a way that I kind of didn't, because I steered clear of it, if I'm honest.
Don't you think that honesty is incredibly liberating?
Yeah, hugely, hugely. And that's the only way that you learn. I've learned so much just chatting to you guys already.
Yeah.
That will really help me, that I'll repeat to somebody else, and then on and on it goes.
Because it's almost like you said, we don't have time, but also I just can't be doing with all the rubbish. I'm just not interested.
That's what I mean. It's like, I haven't got time for this.
Yeah.
So, you know, let's just crack on into what's really important and authentic with what's going on. Because otherwise, it's so interesting what you say, actually, Elizabeth, about the competitiveness that sometimes we can experience, I think, as women. There's no point. You know, ultimately, we're in the second act of our lives. Let's just have a decent, honest, authentic conversation about what's really happening and how you really feel, I think.
And also on that honesty side, obviously with our friends, it really matters. And I think that those relationships are vital, but we all have partners. That's a space to be really honest, I think, as well, where we can just feel very isolated, very alone, navigating our physical changes. And our other half can often take things personally. So, Rebekah, how have you managed that with your partner?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I think it's so true. And when you lose your sense of self, they can often lose you as well, because they're looking in and they love you and they don't understand what's happening. And I think for me, it's been incredibly important to talk, and also really important personally, maybe because I come from a sort of researchy, geeky world, to kind of show menopause almost on paper, because I think when you see the roller coaster that is this kind of this dance our sex hormones play on paper, you realise quite how the peaks and troughs play out, and then it's like, oh, okay, I kind of get it a little bit now, because it is this phenomenal reverse puberty, effectively.
Yeah, that's a great way to word it.
Yeah, and we are so supportive as a society of that when we look at teenagers going through puberty and the kind of concessions we give and the understanding, because we've all experienced it. And I think, you know, for my partner, seeing that on paper and understanding this is a biochemical shift that was really quite dramatic in terms of the impact on my body and mind was really helpful. And then just talking a lot so that he comes on the journey with me.
Yeah, really important. I remember once I was recording a podcast from home and we had a plumber who was doing some work in the kitchen, and I was explaining what I was doing, and he, no word of a lie, stopped and he went, "Isn't it just a figment of women's imagination?" I know, can you imagine? Rage, totally. But I think that, yeah, completely. But I think that's why we need to have these conversations, because actually our partners, unless we talk to them, they're not going to understand. We've got to have those conversations. How's that been for you?
Yeah, I think it's key, again, it's the don't suffer in silence anywhere, because you don't know who you're helping is one thing, but also in the house. So my son calls it the brain fog. No, the brain frog. There you go. When I forget things, when I don't know what's going on. But that also means that he's going to know.
Yes.
Not just my daughter, you know, and we just talk about it openly. You know, we talk about my daughter's periods, about, you know, mum forgetting stuff and, you know, getting ragey sometimes. But I think it's hugely important.
How's your husband dealt with the rage that you've contended with? Because that's a tricky one.
Well, I found the rage really useful, actually. It's kind of powered me on to do an awful lot of stuff and to talk a lot about menopause, but he is very clued up, and he went out and educated himself, and there's a lot of information out there now, and that's had a huge impact, and he doesn't take it personally.
That's really important, isn't it? How's it affected your romance?
My romance, do you know what you have just said, Elizabeth, about the sort of menopausal rage, and it's really made me think, because I think there's something about in our society and our culture that, particularly as women, we are told you should not be angry. You should not. Anger and rage is an energy. It's a way of getting things done, and it's a way of being heard. So, she says ragefully. Yeah, I'm with you. That why should we have our voices silenced? So how's it affected my relationship? Sometimes not very well, because I am vocal, I am direct, and I'm not sure that my other half appreciates that. But I'm not going to change. It's an energy.
And your relationships have changed through midlife too. You are not with the same person that you were with 10, 20 years ago, are you?
Yeah, so I've got quite an interesting romantic journey. I spent 20 years with one guy who's still a really good friend of mine, and I left him when I was 41 for a woman. And it was very exciting. So having that sort of midlife change of, you know, being in a lesbian relationship was fascinating, sexually, spiritually, intellectually. That was very intense. It lasted 8 years and sadly came to an end, but again, we're very good friends. And now I'm in a relationship with a guy again. So sort of doing that full circle has been very interesting in terms of intimacy as well.
Yeah, and how have you navigated that at the same time as body change and hormone change? I mean, that's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, I think so. There's something interesting about going into a new relationship in your 50s that suddenly you re-find your libido, but at the same time I realised I didn't realise this. I've got vaginal atrophy from menopause, from going through menopause. So the tissues around that area, around the vulva, around the vagina, are much thinner, much drier. That's made sex quite painful.
Yeah.
So I've had to educate myself around that as well. So definitely using lube during sex has been a game changer. Having vaginal moisturiser, also vaginal HRT locally to try and sort of plump up the tissues. I know a lot of gynecologists that I work with in terms of there are medical aesthetic procedures, non-painful procedures that you can have that really can help with vaginal atrophy.
I remember having a conversation with a woman in her 70s who was still in a lot of pain, you know, wasn't riding a bicycle, and kind of almost like fundamentally changed her life because of this thing. And she had no idea that there was something that could, you know, we could get help for and you could go and talk to your doctor about, as first and foremost, because it is due to those sex hormones declining. And I think that's the worry, isn't it? That it's great that we're able to have these conversations, but I think also we are able to have them, but there's still a huge sense of taboo in many areas, in not just, I often refer to the sort of the sex bit as the taboo within the taboo of menopause, because menopause itself is still really uncomfortable to talk to for many of us.
Yeah, totally. And also that the vaginal atrophy, that side of things isn't just also sex. It's also leaking when you sneeze. It's the whole pelvic floor area that HRT can really help with, or exercises, or understanding the way that the body works, because all that changes.
Yeah, and your world can get
dramatically.
smaller if you're not careful. You end up sort of not going to the gym, not taking that exercise class, not going to the theatre, not sitting somewhere where you might need to get to the loo really quickly, like having to navigate where the toilets might be in the supermarket, and all of those things become part of what you have to do to navigate the world, because you don't understand that there's these options out there.
There's so much that you can do that actually can help to reverse that. And I think a lot of women don't understand. It's not just doing your Kegels and sort of like lifting and squeezing. There are other things that you can do that will help to reverse that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we have loads of conversations about the doctor can help over the counter. Are there any specific things that anyone's found helpful? That I found that this over-the-counter vaginal moisturiser, which when I first heard about a vaginal moisturiser, I thought it was the beauty industry gone mad, until I started to realise why. I found they have been incredible. Anyone else found anything?
I mentioned earlier on that I do a lot of work with gynecologists, and I see them on a personal basis as well. So I've had, bear with me on this, I've had some vaginal microneedling done.
Have you?
Yeah.
I've not even heard of that.
And also that there's something which I haven't quite brought myself to do yet, but I'm being told that it is a game changer. But there is something, effectively you can have an injection in your clitoris
Oh my goodness
to
me.
just plump up that area as well, that will give you mind-blowing orgasms. I can't quite bring myself to do it yet, but I know that...
Why?
There's something
Go
about...
for it. Yeah, but the results sound pretty good.
I know, but I'm just thinking needles and your clitoris, which, as we know, has more nerve endings than the end of the penis.
Everyone's literally just changed how they're sitting. Everyone's just like that.
Oh yeah, but the microneedling for inside your vagina is a game changer, and there's also heat treatments as well that you can have around the vulva that just plump up the so plump everything up, because as we get to this age, as we know, everything slightly shrinks and lifts and sort of shrivels a little bit and becomes drier.
Yeah.
So it's
And
just
we're not talking about cosmetic. We're not insofar as just making it look nicer. We're talking about things that actually become life-changing when this has become so painful that it's affecting your relationships, it's affecting your daily... You were saying about decisions, where you sit, where you go, what you wear. These kinds of things matter. It really does. So thank you. But I have to go back to your new relationship, because I'm itching to know, did you use a dating app?
I didn't use a dating app, and I know that there are just hundreds out there. I wanted to go old school. I mean, I'm a child of the 80s, so I used to meet people in the pub. So after about a year of being single, I just put it out there to my friendship group and said, I'm ready to meet someone. I really want to meet. I don't care whether it's a man or a woman. I don't care.
You didn't even try an app? You weren't curious?
No, I didn't want to do that. Yeah, for me, I felt uncomfortable with that, and I just wanted to have that old school sort of dating recommendation. And I was very clear about I wanted somebody kind and loving who would value me, who's funny, and blah, blah, blah. And a mate came back to me and said, I've got just the guy for you. So we went on a bit of a blind date, been together ever since.
Wow,
So
what
it
a good
just
friend.
worked.
Amazing.
She was an amazing matchmaker.
Yeah, yeah.
So it just worked.
But then it worked for you online, didn't it?
Yes, that's how I met my husband.
How many did you date before you met him?
3, I think, but I was the first person that he had a date with.
And how old were you? In your mid-30s
Yeah,
then?
so I was 34. Yeah, 34. I just couldn't meet people. It was impossible to meet people. And in the jobs that I worked in, it was kind of mainly females I was working with. Yeah, I like to tell the kids that I bought their dad off the internet.
I love that. And you guys, you met in your mid-30s, you've got 2 children.
Yeah.
And you've kind of gone through the whole menopause journey together. And he's really nurturing, isn't he? He's very involved.
Yeah, hugely, like, really aware of everything, which is a big deal. And I wonder, I don't know if it's true, but I wonder whether having met in midlife, there's no kind of messing around. There's just, I feel this way about you. I mean, we met and got married really quite quickly, looking back on it. Like, I genuinely love being in his company.
That's so lovely.
But I think maybe if we'd met in our 20s and gone all the way through, we might have changed as people so much. I don't know. I really don't know.
And how has your physical life changed?
Just no interest, either of us, to be perfectly honest. I was chatting to him the other day and I was like, how long has it been? And he said, well, you might be pleased to hear it's this year. But I think it was early this year. But we're still really, really intimate. You know, the kids get embarrassed because we're always kissing in the kitchen and dancing and holding hands, and I'll fall asleep snugged into him. And I couldn't be more in love. I just, not fussed.
Yeah, but do you want more sex?
No, and I felt really bad about it because I felt like I ought to feel bad about it. And now I'm just like, well, maybe when, I haven't got 2 teenagers who go to sleep after we go to sleep, maybe in my 60s we'll be like, woo. But I'm quite happy. I want to get my 8 hours of sleep in, thank you.
And you're both on the same page with that, which I think really matters, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. You were about to say something.
I was just going to say, intimacy isn't just sex. And you have been together an awful long time. So it's completely understandable that you don't necessarily want to, get your rocks off every night with somebody you know so well. So I wouldn't beat yourself up about...
Yeah, no, I did just for a short period of time, but it has changed.
But I think also we're programmed constantly, I think, as women particularly, to make sure we're doing everything as best as we possibly can. And I think that even gets down to our sex life too. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it as often as I should be? Like, have I got this wrong? How have you found that, Rebekah?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting hearing Anna and Elizabeth speak, because I think for me, it was about sort of reframing what intimacy is. And it is like a long, lovely conversation over dinner, and it is holding hands, and it is the kisses. And that is as joyful and as important in terms of keeping you close with someone as sort of penetrative sex, which we were always told is the thing that you know, is the healthy sign of a romantic relationship. And so, again, it's back to talking and being open. And I think also sort of rediscovering joy in yourself, you know, because a lot of I think the challenge of menopause is that our bodies do change quite dramatically, but it's also an invitation perhaps to discover what is important. I think it's so interesting that you sort of explore different relationships, because I think that is, again, the opportunity of menopause is kind of sometimes opening that Pandora's box a little bit and being curious about what might bring you pleasure and joy. And it might be something that's very different to what brought you pleasure and joy in your 20s.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you found that in that journey for yourself and also looking after yourself, have you found there have been bits of advice or tips along the way that have helped you do that?
Well, I think that curiosity piece is probably the most valuable thing we could nurture in midlife, because I mean, we've all spoken today about our sort of perimenopause maybe being quite challenging, and then you kind of head into these kind of post-menopause years and everything shifts, and it's, you know, 10, 12, 14 years of our lives. And staying curious and accepting there is no blueprint, there is no sort of like, I've got menopause and it's sorted, unfortunately. You go through these ebbs and flows of what is important to you and what kind of stimulates you. So I think staying curious and trying things, if it doesn't work, moving on. If you love it, keep it, you know, and protect that passionately. But I think that for me has been the most valuable thing to allow myself to do.
Anna, you've been super curious, you've retrained.
Yeah, no, I have. I mean, I've always loved learning, and I will be a lifelong learner. So a few years ago, I qualified as a cognitive hypnotherapist, just because I'm really interested in how the mind works and how you can change your reality. I'm currently training as what's called an RTT therapist, so rapid transformational therapy, with an amazing therapist called Marissa Peer. And she taught me that the mind responds to two things: the pictures in your head and the words that you tell yourself. So you can change your reality by changing those two things. So in a sense, she's got this mantra that she says to lots of midlife women: I am enough. And there's something really important about hanging on to those words, that we don't have to keep trying to be something different, you know, or better. You are actually enough.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not about becoming a new you in midlife. It's about actually finding you and being you and stepping into it totally. And choosing friends and people that you can sit around a table and talk to and share notes and support one another, which is why these conversations are so fabulous to have. So thank you for joining us, and thank you all very much.